Welcome to the Caddo Convos, the podcast that explores the vibrant community of businesses thriving in Caddo Office Reimagined. We're here to shine a light on the incredible entrepreneurs and professionals who make the most of our private offices, co-working spaces, and day office rentals in the Dallas-Fort Worth suburbs. Join us as we share their stories, celebrate their successes, and dive into the benefits of working in a space that's close to home but offers so much more than working from home. Let's get started with today's conversation. Joining me today on the Caddo Convos podcast is Ron Hall with Busy Noggin Incorporated. Ron, thank you for being on the show today.
I appreciate it.
So
Glad to be here.
Great, thank you. Tell me about your business.
Well, I started full-time in this about 16 years ago, and initially just myself, and then over time we've added more developers and that kind of thing. We do software development and website builds, so that's what we handle pretty much extensively. It's beyond just a typical brochure type website. We, generally speaking, when we get involved, there's something else on top of that. And I usually put it in this way. I kind of categorize it this way. A lot of times there'll be one of three things that are true of any project that we handle. Sometimes it's all three. Sometimes it's just one thing. Either they're a site that has a lot of content, talking thousands of pages kind of thing of content to present, or it has an application component to it, like it's got some kind of interactivity. It's taking information from users, it's giving something back to them, those kinds of things. And it's truly a software application at that point. And then also the third thing is that sometimes, or a lot of times, is we also talk to third-party systems. So if a person has like a CRM that they need to talk to, they need to exchange data between that and their website, that's where we come into play as well. One of those three things is always true. A lot of times it's two or three of those things are true. The other thing is that we, generally speaking, work with our clients for multi-years and, project after project, because the clients we work with, they, generally speaking, don't just launch the site and then that's it. They've got to go in and have it expanded, new things come up, they're growing companies, so it's not uncommon for us to do multiple projects, at least one a year for clients for 7 to 8 to 10 years. And so we do everything custom. We do use other software and then we tie those things together, but it's always a custom solution. And this is the other thing that we also work with, is we are very flexible in the way we engage clients as well. Some clients bring us in to handle the entire project. Other clients will bring us in. They already have a designer on board. They have a marketing department that's supplying the content. They need us to actually build the software and build the website. And so we're very flexible in how we work in that area. And kind of a corollary of that is that we work on a collaborative model. Sometimes it's called the Hollywood model. In Hollywood, when you go do a film, you have a director, a producer, actors, crew, and all this, and you do that for one film. The next film may have some of the people may be common, or they'll bring in somebody else, all depending on the needs of the project. And we're kind of that way too. We have all the coding aspects of it we can supply in-house, and we have our developers working on it in terms of the front-end code, back-end code, content management system integration, those kinds of things. But when it comes to visual design itself, we will, if we're tasked as the primary person or group responsible for the project, we'll bring in a designer for that. That way we can pick the best designer for that particular project. We don't staff for that in-house because we feel that we want to get the best design we can, and we know what we do as we build. We can oversee design, we can do the planning for the design and all that, but we bring somebody in for that. Sometimes those roles are reversed. Sometimes a design firm that does branding, marketing, they do the website design, they'll pull us in to handle the actual build. And that's fairly common as well. Even some of those firms actually have in-house programming departments. They bring us in when the requirements of the project are beyond the scope of what their people can handle. And things like SEO, we code for SEO, but SEO strategy, we will either bring somebody in or refer our client to somebody that can actually do the strategy portion of that, so that we can focus on the things that where we're expert at. So
I imagine you have a network of preferred vendors.
Yeah, well, we don't like to work with people we don't know. I mean,
Fair.
yeah, unless the client requires us to, and we can do that. But what we like to do is we keep a smaller number of people available, and we refer work back and forth. Sometimes there's a project comes up that is not really what we do, but we say, you know what, this person will handle this aspect of it really well, and vice versa. And then when we bring them in, we've worked with them before or have really good relationships with them. We know they can produce, and we take responsibility for the work. So, yeah.
Who would you say is your ideal customer?
Well, I would say that generally speaking, it's a company, certainly somebody that the website is critical to their inner workings of business. It doesn't mean that their business has to be focused around the website itself. It could be somebody that does, we have one company that is a multi-million-dollar company that does screen printing. And so, but they take their orders through the web. They show their proofs through the web. They get it approved through the web, all those kinds of things. And we built multiple systems for them that all talk together. And so we, again, as long as they fit within one of those three things that I mentioned about either they have a lot of content, or they have an application that needs to be built, or they need to talk to a third-party system. As long as one of those things at least is in play, then we're a good fit for that.
Interesting.
If it's a very small brochure site, most of the time, not always, but most of the time, we recommend a different route for the client.
Do you, I imagine you're not geographically limited.
No, not
you
at all.
serve,
No. We have, we've had clients all over the U.S. In fact, there are clients that many of them I worked with for years and never saw them face to face. And that's because we connected through what a need was, started doing work for them. We meet, we have a lot of trust built and everything else, but we don't necessarily ever have to go on site to visit them. Sometimes we do, just depends on what's necessary.
We're sitting here at the Flower Mound, Caddo Office Reimagined location. Why did you choose Caddo as part of your
Well,
solution?
I had a unique need at the time. During COVID, I decided to close down the office that we had here in Grapevine. And it's simply because we weren't there enough. And we really don't require it. We were distributed before, and we're distributed now. I have another guy who is in Keller that's an excellent expert programmer. Between he and I, we can actually program or build anything that we have, but we have other people that work with us and for us, some directly and some as we pull in as needed, simply because there's only so many hours in a day. Sure. But we have right now we have two guys, one in Denmark and one in Europe and England, that work for us and full time right now as well. And we keep them busy, and then we pull in other people as we need as well, as work is necessary and such. Right. And why I chose Caddo, which is back to the original question, is I did not need another office because I've got plenty of office space at home, inside, outside, all that kind of stuff. But what I was missing a little bit is sometimes it's helpful to be in an area where you have some white noise, for lack of a better term. It's not like people can sit in a coffee shop and work, those kinds of things. And so what I ended up with Caddo is that I was not interested in leasing an office because, again, I've already got that covered. And what I instead have is a social membership. And that gives me a business address. It also lets me come in anytime. When I come in today, I'm packing pretty light, but I'll pack in 2 desktop monitors and wheel them in and set them up and work. But the nice part about it, I have all the kitchen amenities. There's people moving around, things like that, which actually helps me concentrate rather than distracts me, oddly enough.
Right, it's a mindset.
Well, it is. Sometimes when things are too quiet, or if it's the same thing all the time, then you kind of get, you're much easier to wander. But if you got just some things happening around you, it works well. So that's been really good for me. And the prices really works well for that.
Yeah. Because when you're working from home, you also have home as a distraction.
Well, it has that. Yeah. You have home as a distraction, the familiarity sometimes, and it's important because that's what you need. It's sometimes to be able to focus, and you want to save the travel time, things like that. But in this instance right here, there's a lot of times when I don't want to have that. Yeah. But I also don't want to be in an office in a corner as well. So.
Gotcha. Well, so let's talk about success stories with your clients. I know you must have worked with many. So pick a couple from the top.
Yeah. So we are fairly focused on our clientele, meaning that we we work deeply with a fewer number of clients, and we've done that through our entire history. And as I mentioned, we work with them for years on end. One as an example, is Museum of Science and Industry out of Chicago. They're a museum that's been around and very well known since the 1920s, I think, and we've had them as a client for coming on 10 years now. And we first came in, and there was they have a full digital department for content, and for also they can manage their projects. They had a designer from Denmark that they'd already engaged, and then they brought us in to actually build the site. And so we built that, and since then, every year we do more and more projects for them. Alamo.org, which is the Alamo down in San Antonio, is another. They've been a client for 4 or 5 years, I believe now. That was the one where it really shows the collaborative model we worked with. We were actually contacted by them, and we reached out. We worked up, and it's involved with the state, so you have to go through a lot of requirements in terms of multi-bids, all those kinds of things. But what we did was we contacted Matchbox Studio out of Dallas, which is a very high-end design firm. They've called us in before to build projects for clients that they have, and in this case we brought them in to do the visual design aspect of it. We helped with the user experience, the planning of the site, and then also the building of the site. And we've both done follow-on projects since then for several years. Yeah. And then another large company too that is not as well known, but they do a lot of sophisticated stuff, is Gandy Inc. out of San Angelo, Texas. They do screen printing. They primarily market schools, and they do tons and tons of playoff shirts. And they're a very fast-moving business, but they rely a lot upon digital things for approval of proofs, for submitting them in, running through their art department. So we designed a full system for them, and have been working with them for 5, 6, 7 years.
So when you started your business, what was your why then? Because I know you're like, I'm going to do this. This is working for me.
Well, I was at that time in my life, I had worked in various creative disciplines for quite a while: photography, creative direction, some writing, and also web had started to come in on that for a while. And I worked for a nonprofit here in this area, and as creative director, and I'd done that for 17 years, and happy there and everything else, but decided that, if I'm going to ever do this on my own or have a little bit more branching out in terms of what I want to do, I want to try to do it on my own. So I went ahead and made that transition, and then started doing it full time in 2008.
Excellent. Let's talk about how do customers contact you?
Well, that's always a bit of a mystery. I think that's one of the weakest part of our business is we're better at, we are excellent at performing the work and working with the clients, but we also don't do a lot of promotion for the most part. That's going to change here in another year or so. How they do find us, though, is sometimes I've heard us speak at conferences. Other times they have been referred by someone else. Matchbox is one early on that we started doing some work for one example was a client they had had for several years, and she was wanting to rework their site, but he could tell it was going to be something that's going to be a little more massive in terms of the build. So he called me up, and we worked together on it. And then for 10 years after that, they continued to do the design work for that client. We did the website work, and that's when that client got bought out. The primary person we were dealing with at the first business went on to somewhere else, and then we're getting ready to do the site on that new company. And that's happened multiple times too, where somebody gets bought out and then they start, hey, you really need to have these people come in and do our work. So
yeah, your business sounds like a business that truly benefits from relationships and referrals.
It does a lot because there's a lot of trust involved. And people talk about that a lot, and the thing is that it really comes to fruition once you start working with somebody. So as some examples, is what we found is that as we work with a client, about year 3 or somewhere beyond there, they start pulling us in on other things, like either they have a new product launch, and so sometimes we'll speak into things that are actually outside of our wheelhouse simply because they trust us and they want to get ideas from us in terms of how they work on the web. I've even had instances where they were getting ready to hire for their team internally, and they had us on the interview team. Just simply because they trusted us in terms of being able to see things in people that were interviewing for a position that would kind of overlap with what we're doing. So
closing thoughts on your business, your industry, and what customers should know about you? Obviously, you based a lot on trust.
Well, one of the first things that we do is we always encourage people that when they have a need or an idea, just give us a call. It doesn't cost anything to talk. We always require a kind of a initial call to kind of vet and see, is there even a possibility for a fit? Because to us, it's very important to us because as we own what we do, and we invest a lot of ourselves in it, even though we are getting paid for it, certainly, but it's important to us that it's be done right. And we also want to make sure that the fit is there, and also that the person really needs us and our level of expertise. That's not always the case. I had one just recently. They came in and they were referred to us by a consultant, and thought they needed to have a time tracking app built in order to track their employees when they're on site and things like that. And so in the midst of the initial call, we said, we think that probably we could build it, no problem whatsoever. It's custom software and all the rest, but we really doubted that there was a full custom solution was the way to go. That can get expensive, and when it's needed, it's worth it, every penny of it. But you have to factor in not only the initial cost, but also what it costs to maintain it and how to expand it. And that's what we do, and we love doing it. But instead, what we did was we engaged them in a discovery and strategy project. So what we did was you first went in and said, let's look at your needs and see what's out there already. And then we'll come back, and either there'll be something off the shelf that'll work that you haven't been able to identify yet, or there'll be solutions that are almost there, but maybe we come in and do some additional custom programming to utilize that service. Or third, it may be a full custom solution. We thought that probably the third was the least likely, even though it was the one that most fit our wheelhouse. And so we ended up with that, and we'll end up with, I believe, probably an off the shelf that can be customized. Is what it'll end up with on that. And I had that happen another time as well, where a client came to us. They were concerned about a developer that was telling them certain things about their site that didn't seem quite right in terms of performance, and so they engaged us to do an audit on their site. And a lot of times that's what we'll do. We'll come in, we'll look at it, we'll give our best assessment of what the state of the solution is at that time and where it can be improved. We always try to say, look at when it was built, because sometimes they say, well, it was built okay for that time, but there's better ways to approach it. This is what you might want to do. And in this case, it was one of the rare instances where we said, in this case, you need to burn it to the ground, and we need to go from scratch. Now, the solution that they had that was built upon was actually a very good solution, but it's poorly implemented. And over time, it had become very unmanageable because of the way it was added onto. So we said, no, if you want to stay on that same system, that'd be very fine. But if not, there are other systems that can do it, and there's other developers that can do it. So what we did for them, and this was a very large project, it was about 26 magazine sites that were all under one umbrella. And I said, why don't we go do a discovery and strategy project with some initial conceptual design, very lightweight design. And we'll go in, we'll assess your current systems, what they need to talk to, all the kind of due diligence that you need, because right now, nobody can price this thing well. So we went in and did that, and I said, then we'll do two things. Number one, we'll give you a price for what it takes for us to build it. And number two, we'll help identify other developers that might be a fit for you, and we'll vet those as well. As that project continued, there were some things that came up that we felt that there was not going to be a best fit client to us relationship. And so we dropped out of the running, but we continued on and narrowed it down to a couple of different solutions there. And said vetted those developers, put them in front of their leadership, and then they came down to one. Now, that is probably one case study that's kind of interesting. That when we were vetting the developers, we said that probably we had in our head that if it was less than $250,000 they came up with, or over $500,000, they probably didn't understand the project well. And when we narrowed it down, we put together a 25-page brief that all the information which systems needed to go, and then they could go ahead and come up with a proposal. Given the same information, also with the ability to ask us more questions and stuff about the systems, the difference in the prices, one was at $375,000, which is right there. The other was at $1.2 million.
Wow, that's broad.
It is broad, and that's one of the things that I think people need to understand is that I called the second group back. Now I didn't tell them what the other group said. I said, I don't think you quite understand. I said, yeah, these are 26 sites, but they're all using the same templates. They're just different color schemes. And they came back with another price. They were still quite a bit higher than needed to be. But I think sometimes when these were both very nationally had done national sites, very capable for both firms, but one didn't ask all the questions that they needed and didn't explore all the different options. And I think sometimes if all your sites come in at $1.2 million, everything looks like $1.2 million. And it wasn't. Yeah. And sometimes it was when they showed me what they had planned for resources, it was worth that much money, but I said, you're not going to need that much. And so that was a value where that particular engagement we had was about $45,000. But we were able to identify a developer. We were able to get that, and also they weren't trying to figure all that kind of stuff out themselves. And they went with the person that was at $375, came out with a great project, and they did more and more work for them later. So, and also we didn't feel like we had to be the person who had to do the site.
Right.
We liked doing it, and we're good, and we could build it. But we just had some flags, for lack of a better term, on that particular client. We were a little concerned where it might go from there, and we knew that they'd be well handled by this other group.
Yeah. Would you say that that's a good mindset to have, that you don't knowing yourself and knowing your business, and also not being that I have to do this project? You know?
Well, there's nothing more draining than to get into something where that you're not the right fit for it. And that doesn't mean you don't know what you're doing, but it may not be where you're best geared for. Or it may be overkill. A lot of times, what we normally run into is that when there's a fit, it's a really good fit. That's when we work a long time. But other times what we'll do is we'll say, you know what, I don't think you need somebody with our kind of muscle. I think it's overkill. Yeah. And I think there may be a better route to handle that, and we'll refer to them whoever, and we're very open-handed with that kind of thing. Because we ultimately want people to get the best solution, and it's going to be best for them, and then they'll tell somebody else, right. Or they're going to need something more later on, and they'll come back to us.
It's very much the way it comes around goes around. You know?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, we really do care that we do people, treat people right, those kind of things, and we think that it pays a lot of dividends in the long term. So
I agree. Well, I appreciate you joining us on the Caddo Convos today, Ron.
Okay, great. Been happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us today on the Caddo Convos podcast. A huge shout out to our incredible network of members for making our community vibrant and supportive. If you're looking to boost your productivity and reduce the isolation of working from home, consider joining us at Caddo Office Reimagined. Our spaces are designed to meet your evolving needs, support remote work, and foster a sense of community that's hard to find at home. Whether you're a startup aiming for growth, a freelancer seeking a professional setting, or a company looking to optimize resources, Caddo offers a perfect blend of flexibility and innovation. By joining us, you'll be a part of a dynamic business ecosystem that helps you thrive. For more information, visit caddooffices.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Caddo Convos.